The hospital room where my father was staying smelled faintly of a cleaning spray and a type of herb. The machines around him made soft humming sounds, like they were trying to recall a tune. I held my father's hand, and it felt incredibly light in mine, like bone and thin paper. He who had always seemed so strong and heavy now felt fragile. He spoke my name, Adrian, and then whispered a secret, as if he was digging it up from a hidden spot. I have another son. His words landed in my heart with a shocking force, like a key fitting into a lock in a house that wasn't mine. He let go of my hand to reach under his hospital gown. He pulled out a small, soft velvet bag. His hands trembled. Inside was a navy blue pen with a gold tip, worn dull from years of signing important papers. My father's initials, RF, were carved into the side. He pressed the pen into my hand, closing my fingers around it, as if giving me a heavy task, not just a gift. "Find him," he pleaded. "Please." "And his name?" I asked, trying to grasp onto a small detail to hide my fear. My father swallowed hard. A nurse came in, glanced at the machines, and then quietly left when she saw the look on my face. My father's breathing became shallow. He reached for his tray table, knocked over his water, and mumbled a curse that sounded like a prayer. Under a picture frame, he found an envelope. Inside were a key for a storage locker and a yellow sticky note. On it, in his handwriting, were 3 words: Evan Toby, Wren Street. "Dad," I said, my voice cracking, Is he? He shook his head, a small, stubborn movement. "I wanted to, before." He blinked hard. "Please." I put the pen in my pocket, feeling its weight like a new part of me. I promised him I would find his son. I watched his chest rise and fall one last time. There's nothing that truly prepares you for the moment a person you can talk to becomes a person you can only talk about. I pressed the pen so hard against my leg that it hurt, wondering what other secrets it had signed into existence. The funeral was a confusing blur of dark clothes, food, and people starting sentences with, "Your father was," and ending them with things that said more about themselves than about him. My mother sat stiffly on a folding chair and avoided my gaze when the pastor mentioned complications. People gave me their phone numbers and their sadness as if I were supposed to send them a bill. Later, Ms. Hale, the lawyer, a small and precise woman, pulled me aside at the reception. "There's a special part of the will for a minor," she said. "The details are sealed until the person is identified." A minor. The word hit my head at an odd angle. I touched the pen in my shirt pocket. I felt the weight of the locker key in my pants pocket, like a coin I couldn't spend. Back home, I sat at my kitchen table, my father's pen between my fingers, the key glinting under the light like 2 tiny moons. The sticky note lay on the wood. Evan Toby, Wren Street. The pen made a soft click as it rolled, a sound that seemed to say both yes and no. The storage locker was a dusty cube, 10 feet by 10 feet, full of hidden things. I didn't recognize any of it. There were receipts with a P.O. box address, a leather folder with printed emails that felt like the beginnings of a lie. Lines like monthly support as discussed and transfer confirmation. They were sent to T. Finch. Then I found a shoebox filled with photos. Parks, street corners, playgrounds, church steps. No faces. In one picture there was a wooden sign that said Wren Street Community Park. In another, a corner of a children's clinic window with a poster about vaccines. In an envelope, a copy of a birth certificate application. The box for father was empty. The box for mother had a name, Faye, but part of it was hidden by a fold, as if the paper itself wanted to protect me. Faye. The name sat there, waiting to be lit like a match. I stared at it for a long time before folding the paper and placing it at the bottom of the pile, as if I could bury a word under more paper and make it less important. I made a list. People do this when life feels too wide and confusing. Wren Street. Parks within 2 hours. Clinics near Wren Street. The P.O. Box location. The pen left a blue line on the paper. My father's handwriting on the sticky note seemed to have been waiting all along to be noticed. I went to Wren Street locations. There were more than I expected. One Wren Street was a dead-end road with a broken basketball hoop, an old woman watching from a metal chair, and 3 kids playing ball, not noticing the man trying to recognize a whole life from the smell of a neighborhood. Another Wren Street was a street with a laundromat, a quick loan place, and a small shop where the clerk told me, Finch, the old man, he used to buy yellow flowers on Thursdays. He pointed me towards a park with a squeaky swing set. It became my routine. On Saturdays, I'd leave my apartment with coffee, a thermos, and my father's pen in my shirt pocket. I'd revisit old maps in my mind, asking careful questions as if I were a surveyor of old regrets. I went to 4 clinics and learned the smell of waiting rooms meant for children, crayons, hand sanitizer, and the faint sound of cartoons. I reread emails that said nothing I could use. Some nights, I dreamed of a man my age with my father's eyes and my mother's habit of pinching her nose bridge when she was tired. I imagined us in a kitchen, talking like adults, a mix of awkwardness and relief. I pictured telling him 1,000 things, and then, the most important one, I didn't know. I came as soon as I could. On a gloomy afternoon, when the light was weak and hazy, I sat in my car outside a community center with Wren painted in blue on its side. I watched people move through the rainy day. A father walked by, holding a child's hand, who carried a plastic dinosaur. A woman with a green umbrella counted to 5 steps, as if making a deal with the sidewalk. Wren Street Community Park was 3 blocks east. The sign from my father's photograph now had splinters and chipping paint, but the word was still the same. I stood there like someone waiting for a bus they hadn't paid for and didn't deserve to ride. I walked into the park. It was the kind of park for people who forget their coats. There were 2 swings. One was missing its seat, the other held together by careful knots. A boy sat in the sandbox, his tongue pressed to his lip, concentrating. He rolled a toy truck back and forth, carefully keeping its wheels exactly on the imaginary line between the sand and the cement. He had a cowlick that wouldn't stay down. He looked about 5 or 6 with a serious expression children get from adults, but somehow make lighter. I have my father's eyes. When I looked at the boy, it was like looking into a strange mirror, one that showed not myself, but the person who had thought of me when they gave me my face. A woman's voice behind me called out, "Toby!" It was the familiar musical tone of someone who had said that name 1,000 times, softly and loudly. I turned, because you always turn when someone says the name you've carried in your pocket for a year. She came into view walking with a confident stride, like someone who had crossed that street many times and was now immune to cars. She wore a rain-colored coat and a scarf the color of a fresh start. She bent down and kissed the boy's hair. He said, "I was on the line the whole time." And she replied, "I see it." And he believed her because she truly did. She straightened up and saw me. Her mouth tried to form a shape, then decided not to. Faye. We stared at each other like 2 people who had no desire to share a past, but were bound by it nonetheless. I felt strange, being alive and standing there, filled with whatever a human is filled with at 3:17 in the afternoon in a park. She reached for Toby, not moving him, a reflex like touching a hot stove to remember a rule. "Adrian," she finally said, the word landing between us and refusing to be anything else. I started, then stopped. What does a man say when two completely different lives crash together? I had imagined a man my age. Here was a boy with my father's eyes and her firm set to his jaw. Even at a young age, when he concentrated. "Not here," she said. It wasn't an order, but a kindness. She didn't ask why I was there. She knew exactly why. "Come by at 7 when he's asleep." She gave me her address. Her eyes looked at mine as if a prison sentence she had been serving was about to end. I left because I had no reason to stay. In the car, I leaned forward and rested my forehead on the steering wheel as if it had done something wrong. Then I laughed, a sound like a man who had forgotten how to laugh without it turning into something else. I put the pen against my teeth, and they made that dull click that says, "Yes, the world has decided against you today. Yes, you still have to make a decision before night." At 7, I knocked on a door that had seen a different me in a different life. She opened it. The house smelled of soap and something baked that had beautifully failed. A dinosaur on the coffee table watched me with a permanently surprised expression. We sat at her kitchen table with 2 mugs, neither of us pretending we weren't drinking what we were drinking. The light above the stove cast a small, comforting glow. In another room, a sound machine hummed at the same soft frequency as a mother's prayer. "I need you to be a person about this," she said without being mean. "Not a weapon." "I don't know if I can," I said, which felt like an honest start. "Toby is 5. He's Toby." She smiled, then quickly stopped, as if there were only so many smiles left, and apologies were also in short supply. "Your father and I—" She paused, rolling her shoulders back as if setting down a heavy box. "It was complicated. You were away a lot. I was angry a lot. Your father was—" She let out a small, terrible laugh. "He was a charmer. And the worst part is, I didn't even like him at first. He came to fix the copier at the charity and ended up telling stories about ink the way my grandfather told stories about machines in the factory. He made broken things seem fixable." "You're aware of the irony?" I asked, because when I don't know what to feel, my mouth often tries to be smart. "Yes," she said, not flinching. "He was the last person I should have let into my life. He was too old. He was married to your mother. I knew who he was. You were at your father's house the night I realized I was in a room with a man I was going to accidentally hurt if I kept standing there and didn't leave. Do you think I don't hear it every time I pick up a spoon? Do you think your name isn't a rock in my mouth some days?" We sat in that harsh truth, letting it be as unpleasant as it was. "Did he know?" I asked. "Yes." She wrapped both hands around her mug, like someone holding on to something that might try to escape. "He told me he would tell you. He told me he had a trust fund set up, that he would tell the truth, and that if I told you first, it would make you hate us both completely. He told me he would be braver later." She blinked, as if the idea of later had physically left the room. Later arrived wrong. I let the pen roll between my fingers. Each click was like a heartbeat for a body trying to stay seated, not stand up, not end something that was already over. "He asked me to find him," I said. "He said, 'Another son.' And I thought he meant a grown man." "I know," she said. "When I saw you at the park, the look on your face made me want to, I don't know, undo the last 10 years. Invent a different father for my son. Invent a different version of myself, even if it meant I never met Toby. But that's not how this goes. This goes like this. She pushed a file across the table with the seriousness of a pastor handing a marriage license to sinners. His birth certificate, Father Blank, my name, pediatric records, contact for the estate attorney because I knew you would come. DNA if your brain needs facts. It's never what your heart needs, but I know how minds work. I need both, I said. Then take both, she said. And don't do to Toby what was done to you. Don't make him a place to put the pain for choices that are ours. That's my only request. She cried once, a small, quiet sob into her sleeve. We talked about schedules, about complicated words children don't need yet, about animals and building blocks, and a 5-year-old's serious interest in why sand won't act like a road. On my way out, I stood in the doorway like a thief, wondering whether to confess. I turned back and said, I don't forgive you. I don't forgive him. But I want to avoid doing the thing I know how to do best. Run? She asked. Ruin, I clarified. The DNA test kit looked silly, 2 cotton swabs in a bag. The awkwardness of trying not to let your hands touch your life. The results came on a Tuesday when some people are eating bacon and others forget breakfast. Half siblings, 90-something%. It felt less like science and more like the basic law of gravity. Here you both are, holding the same center. Ms. Hale scheduled a meeting at her office like people schedule storms on calendars to feel in control. She slid a document across the desk with the same formality as a pastor handing a marriage license to sinners. Your father set up a trust 5 years ago. Beneficiary, Toby Finch. Payments in stages for education and health, then a main payment at 25. The trust needs a named family guardian to confirm his identity. If you sign, we open the trust and appoint a professional trustee along with Ms. Pale, so no one has too much to do, and everything has more than one set of eyes. You need me to make him legitimate, I said, tasting the word and finding it bitter. I need you to do what your father should have done while he could, she said, with the gentle honesty of a person who doesn't pretend lawyers don't have opinions. And yes, the trust currently shows your father's inability to be completely open. He planned to fill in the blanks himself. In my job, we have a saying, people die at inconvenient moments. It's our job to make sure children don't pay the full price for that. My mother received the news like a woman asked to lift a couch, only to discover it was filled with bricks. She sat at her kitchen table, which had hosted every Sunday roast of my childhood, and said, I kept thinking it was your fault. She shook her head at her own confession. What a relief to be wrong. It's not your fault either, I said. We both looked at the spot near the sink where my father used to stand, solid as gravity. The radio on the counter pretended to be busy giving the weather report. Do you want to meet him? I asked. She nodded once. Not as the boy who did this to me, as the boy who survived us. At Ms. Hale's office, I pulled the fountain pen from my pocket as if it were finally ready to do its true job. I signed where she pointed, my name looking both familiar and strange on the same line. The ink was blue and clear, and the pen made that soft scratching sound I recognized from crosswords, from college essays, and from the mortgage on a house my father had almost kept. I thought about keeping it, I said, turning the pen in my fingers, feeling the carved initials with my thumb. It's yours, she said, but old things can be heavy. You can put it down. I placed the pen on her desk like a man leaving a heavy package at a border crossing. I picked up something else instead, crayon and paper. a drawing of two stick figures holding hands that Toby had pressed into my palm after a perfectly normal afternoon at the park, where we said things like, "That truck is red," and "How high can you swing?" and not, "How do you carry a betrayal without dropping it on a child?" "I like bass," he said when I introduced myself, stumbling over the syllables of Adrian. "Uncle Bass. Anyone who tells you names don't matter has never had to decide what a child should call them. There's no version of this story where I forgive my father. He's gone, and the last thing he told me was a task I never asked for. But there is a version where I don't let a 5-year-old boy carry any of his father's mistakes. I've chosen that version, like choosing a sober friend to drive when you're too drunk to trust yourself, because the consequences demand it. Sundays are now pancake days. My mother learned how to make them with smiley faces, and Toby learned to flip them an inch off the pan while a grown man pretends not to panic about spitting bacon grease. She called him sweetheart on the second Sunday, as if she'd been practicing the word all week to make sure it wouldn't break when she said it. Faye and I aren't a love story that turned into a puzzle and then a miracle. We are two adults who looked at the facts and decided that friendship with clear rules is better than any other dramatic story we could create. Her boundaries are a map I keep in my back pocket. Mine are too. We have a shared calendar app that would make a stock analyst thrilled. On the table by my mother's sink, in front of the radio that still reports the weather as if it has never been wrong, sits my father's ring in a small dish. We both pass it, and neither of us picks it up. You might think we're building a memorial. We're not. We're letting a symbol have a place, like any other guest, and reminding ourselves that no one controls the room anymore. Sometimes I take Toby to the library on Wren Street and watch him learn how to whisper. Sometimes I sit at the edge of the sandbox and let him draw a road exactly along the line between sand and cement, careful and sure. He likes to show me where the wheels go. I like to tell him, "I see it," and watch his shoulders relax, as if that was all he needed. I went to the cemetery one last time with the drawing in my pocket and the habit of talking to a stone in my mouth. I placed the fountain pen on my father's grave like setting down a box I had carried too far. "I found your son," I said. "He is 5 and serious and perfect at telling sand what to be. He is my brother. He will grow up knowing that adults make a mess and adults clean it up, and that he is neither the mess nor the mop." I put the drawing beside the pen long enough to remember its colors. Then I put the drawing back in my pocket and left the pen. My mother asked me later if I wanted to go back for it. I said no. I have other things to write with now. When people ask me what I found after a year of searching, I tell them the truth. I thought I would find a man. I found a boy who needed someone to protect him from the storm that had already happened. And I found a man inside myself I had been trying to avoid meeting.